Welcome back again to the breakdown of Zelensky's interview to The Economist. Sorry. Okay, let's dive into it.
It's clear that Ukraine is facing a host of new challenges as the war gets longer and more complex than many hoped for or expected. Militarily, upping the ante requires resources and, of course, consistent support from the West. The same can be said for economic support, and all the while, the diplomatic task is also getting harder. After their meeting with the president, Zani Minton-Beddoes, The Economist's editor-in-chief, and our Eastern Europe editor, Arkady Ostrovsky, joined me for a post-interview debrief. Hi, Zani. Hi, Arkady.
Hi, Ore. Good to talk to you, as always.
Hi, Ore. Great to be on the show.
So, as you mentioned in your interview there, the two of you visited President Zelensky in March 2022, when Russian troops were still just outside the capital. How does that interview compare to this one?
Oh, it was completely different. The setting, first of all, was completely different. In March 2022, when we came to see President Zelensky, it was in his bunker in a city that was empty. This time, we were speaking to him on the sort of edges of a large conference full of visitors from abroad in a city that, frankly, is hopping. I mean, yes, there are air sirens, but the city feels like a booming, city in September, beautiful sunshine. So the setting and the city couldn't have felt more different.
One could wonder, how is the city so alive with all these barbaric armies just bombarding and slaughtering civilians without any criteria? Goes a little bit against what is the stories that have been told about this, about the way Russia conducts the war.
But actually, Zelensky himself, he was sounding determined. I think probably a little more reflective than last time, when it was very much in that first heroic Ukraine coming together time of the war.
Yeah, heroic, all right. After he had guarantees and that Russia would not assassinate him or do efforts to kill him, he became heroic, all right. But only after such guarantees. And the rest is a Hollywood movie, as you all know. Give me ammunition. Really hate that kind of... I have been brought up amidst this propaganda in the 80s. Don't forget. So you can identify it right away where it comes from. Who are the authors, the script writers? And I think, Zelensky, it did not seem, like she said, it did not seem to me very determined. He seemed worried, though, right?
Now I think he has realized, as everybody we've spoken to this week, I think, is thinking that this could be a very long haul. And I think clearly his message to us was they don't want it to be a long war. In their view, it doesn't have to be a long war if they get the weaponry they need. That was, to me, very much his message.
Yes, I agree. And it is very, very different, isn't it, Zani? I mean, for one thing, curfew, I think, at the time when we were here was about 4 or 5 o'clock in the afternoon and the city was completely empty. It's now midnight and people are enjoying life because life so matters here, because people understand what it actually means.
People are enjoying life at midnight in Kiev, all right. We're not the ones who are sent to the front line against their will. We all seen the videos. There are plenty of them to corroborate. Plenty of evidence. And we know that also the main recruitment or the main sources of manpower, at least cannon fodder, we know that are coming mainly from eastern regions of Ukraine. Not to mention the ones that are privileged enough to pay not to be drafted.
While being very aware of hard winter coming. And I think when we first talked to him, he was in a state of shock, as the country was, as the whole world was. In my experience, it's very rare when a politician actually listens and engages in a conversation rather than just plays you his message. And he was clearly thinking about the Western support, how he's going to persuade the West to stay the course. And I think that was the mood.
And just on that topic of Western support, he did seem to dodge your question about how to prepare the Ukrainian economy to live without, or at least with less, foreign support. What do you make of that?
You're right, Ori. He didn't answer that question clearly. And I think there's two reasons for that. One is that I think his primary focus is still to get that external support. He's still making the case for why the West needs to keep up or possibly even increase its support. But I think it's not that he's not thinking about a plan B for if the scale of support doesn't materialize. And actually, interestingly, we didn't do the whole of this interview in English.
He dodged the question, and you dodge a question. So it's double dodging. The simple answer is that it cannot. It simply cannot survive without the Western aid. It would crumble immediately. And you have a hard time admitting this, I know. Because it makes the West look bad. Because they need to portray a hero nation, a nation that is so resilient that being the underdog still resists heroically against all the mightiest army in Europe. And yeah, we know this. But although I must say that overall this Economist journalists haven't done their work so bad as I've seen in many other networks chains, but yeah, still.
English, and there were times when we changed languages and there was a much greater focus of detail. And Arkady, maybe you give a bit of a summary of that.
Yes, so he talked about the new social contract that will have to emerge, a new social contract inside the country in case Western support declines. And he was very clear about it, and he said, it's not the moment to talk yet, but I am thinking about how I'm going to talk to the nation. And then he turned slightly and said, Western politicians don't know what's coming their way.
So, a new social contract. Two reasons. The second reason was never stated by the journalist. Then the Economist's chief editor, whatever, talks about the new social contract. Then no one knows what it is. And then the real answer comes. And we talked it in the previous video.
If they start withdrawing support from Ukraine, because I will appeal to the people, and it's the electorates in Europe and in the West that will feel that their politicians have sold down Ukraine.
Now, President Zelensky...
Yeah, so that's it. That really sums it up. There is the backup plan. And the backup plan is that if you don't support me, I will raise a rebellion against you. Basically, as that. I'm smiling and laughing, but believe me, I do not find it funny. It's just my way of expressing. Sorry.
Zelensky really tried to emphasize that progress is being made at the front line, even if it's slower progress than they'd like. But he also said that he thought the war could end in 2024. Tell me, how realistic is that timeline?
So I think my honest answer is I don't know. It is true that they are making progress, incremental progress, but clearly much less progress than people expected at the beginning of this counteroffensive.
She doesn't know how realistic his 2024 timeline is because it's unrealistic. Simple as that. And as I stated in the previous video, in my opinion, it's just a carrot at the end of the stick. It's just that hope, that little extra hope that people need. Just keep on grinding, or if I must say, keep on being grinded.
It's also true that with more weaponry, more heavy weaponry, a lot could be achieved. Probably not over the winter, but in 2024. But one of the shifts in approach that I gauged this week was that it is not just a question of progress at the front, but increasingly there is a focus on degrading Russia's capabilities. Already, as you know, there have been reports of Ukrainian drones, although not officially confirmed, but there have been reports of Ukrainian drones hitting far into Russia. And I think it's clear to us that that capability is growing.
Yeah, and a lot of terrorist attacks, by the way. And if she implies that just because Ukraine is acquiring means to shoot further in Russia's territory, that has played a role in degrading somehow Russia's industrial capacity or Russia's economy. Again, there is absolutely no evidence for that whatsoever. And what they achieve with that is, mainly they galvanize the Russian people. That's what they do. Because even if someone have doubts in supporting President Putin, maybe if someone doesn't support President Putin, because there are other parties to support, don't forget that. Even his opposition will galvanize around him, because it's better to have a president that you do not support but that keeps the country together than a complete chaos that everyone in Russia still remembers of. Well, maybe not the younger generations, but still most of the people remembers how it was when Russia was called a friend and it was in complete chaos.
As that capability scales up, I think there's going to be much more of a focus on deterring Russia, degrading Russia's capability. And so it will no longer just be a conversation about what's happening, in Robotyne or what's happening on the Eastern Front. It'll be also that second aspect. Will it end up in a victory in 2024? I have no idea.
Yeah, and I think there's also a question of what victory means and how do you define it? Do you define it in terms of territory or preservation of Ukrainian lives? But this incremental progress is very, very...
Well, definitely not the second, not the latter. Ukrainian lives are not being prioritized here.
Very important for morale of Ukraine, that the war continues, that they are making progress. But what we don't know is what effect those strikes are going to have on Russian politics, on Russian society, on support for this war. We know a lot more about Ukraine. Social cohesion is still very strong here. We know a lot less about Russia. And
social cohesion is strong in Ukraine, all right. Especially after you get rid of all the opposition. That sure helps cohesion.
Russia, what we have seen, can be very, very brittle. And at what point what looks stable suddenly starts crumbling, we don't know.
Zanny.
Okay, this is the end of it. This last statement, it's obviously wishful thinking. Russia might crumble anyway. Everyone still wants to think of Russia in that memory when the Soviet Union dissolved, and that was a society crumbling, all right. The same was fought in the beginning of this offensive in 2022, when everyone fought. For example, you had studies in Oxford University, and you had YouTubers like Joe Blogs, which is supposedly an economics expert, predicting 30-40% contraction in Russia's GDP. And I mean, this was coming from the cream of economic experts, academic people. And you know how this turned. We all know how is it now. And still mention the point of isolation. Don't forget that still today, a lot of companies that claim to be closing in Russia are still operating there. And some of them very significant. For example, Nestle. But that's only one example that I can appoint. There are many others. For example, Japan Tobacco International, not so known, but for example, Philip Morris is well known. Leroy Merlin, also staying in Russia. Pepsi, Auchan, Metro, and many, many other companies. And some of them never left completely. Well, they close some branches, they do some makeup to pretend that they are abandoning Russia, and some of them even returned. So just don't forget that there was a recent news in The Guardian, I think, I will comment on that one in a later video. But that the imports from Halliburton into Russia, Halliburton, oil into Russia had increased this year. So, I don't know. I'm not so sure about those sanctions and that everyone is galvanized to isolate Russia. Well, and of course, I'm not even mentioning Russia's diplomacy around the world. Okay, guys, if you like this video, please subscribe. Please follow this channel for more. Help me, motivate me to do more content like this. This one is just, I don't really need much motivation other than the one that made me start doing it anyway. I live well with low numbers, but it's always pleasant. Thank you. And of course, if you like this video, please subscribe, follow this channel, help it grow a little bit, help it enhance its contribution in the information space. Thank you very much. Tune in for the next one.